Thank you for being a friend. Travel down the road and back again. Your heart is true. You're a pal and a confidant.
Hey everyone, it's Jeff here on my podcast Get to Know Me, and today I'm so honored to have a therapist counselor on here who just happens to be my oldest daughter as well. Ashley, how are you?
Good. How are you, Dad?
I am very good. Again, I'm so proud and of you and what you've done with the LGBT community with everything that you do for them.
I love it. I love what I do.
So I wanted to have you on here because I've started a new podcast about our trans family, and I want to give them a voice. And hopefully, this podcast, getting to talk to you and learning a little bit about what you do, um, I hope it gives them some hope because I know we're in a crazy time right now, and a lot of people are scared, and it's understandable that they are scared. A-
Absolutely.
And I just want to, hopefully give them some ideas, give them some comfort if we can, and let them know that they're not out there alone.
Okay.
So the first thing I want to do is just talk about general understanding and support for our transgendered family. What are some of the common challenges the transgendered individuals face during their transition?
So probably one of the biggest one is discrimination. And that is such a blanket, word. I mean discrimination with families, friends, community, school, work, all of it.
Hmm.
Just all of a sudden everyone knows you as this person and then things change. That's a really big transition for a lot of people and they don't understand it, so therefore they discriminate against it.
Yeah, and that's what's up because you see it all the time, and it's just if some people would take the time to educate themselves, learn that these people are just wanting to live their life the way everyone else is, and they should be able to as well.
Oh, absolutely. Like these individuals have not changed. Their outsides may change, but their insides have always looked like this.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Well, can you share some coping strategies that might help with the emotional aspect of transitioning?
Absolutely. So one of the biggest one is building a support network because as you go through this, it is so hard to figure out who's on your side and who isn't.
Hmm.
And so in order to cope or even build strategies, the support system has to be built. And I tell people all the time, if your family doesn't want to be involved, let's build it. Who is your family? Who is going to be those people with you? And unfortunately, there are some times where it's just me. And
Yeah,
I have them bring in paperwork. We research together. I'll pull my laptop down. We'll sit in the floor. Of course, this is when we were face to face,
yeah.
and we'll go through and find, support groups. I am very hands-on with my clients when it comes to just finding that support system. And so when it's just me, I'll be that support system for you until you can build your own.
And do you find it often where families don't accept?
Initially, yes. I think I would say 65% of the time, the individuals I work with, family is just so shocked and confused.
Yeah.
And of course, there's all these things you see in the media, or religious reasons, things like that can really put a damper on things.
Hmm.
And eventually they'll come around, not always, but it's really nice to see it when it does.
It does. Yeah, I bet that's something pretty special.
It is. And to see that person light up when their family does is amazing.
Oh, of course it is. Well, how do you approach building trust and rapport with someone that's going through the transition?
I use humor a lot and sarcasm, and a lot of people really gravitate towards that. But more than anything, I actively listen, I support, hold space for somebody, just sit there. I can't tell you how many times in a face-to-face setting I have sat with someone and listened to them cry,
Yeah.
not offering any words of wisdom, just letting it out. Just being able to be safe for somebody is important.
I would imagine there are times that the your job is extremely difficult having to be there and do things like that when you know their family won't do it.
Exactly. And that's why support groups and so with doing telehealth, I don't have a central location. I work in different states. And so a lot of times when my clients come in, we figure it out together. Where are you at? Biggest cities that are around you. Let's find support groups in that area so that, they can find somebody close to them. And so
Hmm.
building that support group is really important.
Well, and you mentioned it, licensed in certain states. This is a great time to bring up, where are you currently licensed?
So I actually don't reside in any of the states I'm licensed in currently. So I originally licensed in Texas. That's my home state. I've been licensed in Texas as an LPC or a licensed professional counselor for 13 years in October. Yes, 13
Okay.
years in October. I was fully licensed. And then I'm now licensed in Kentucky as of 5 years this month. And then, with that being said, Kentucky allows us to do what's called a reciprocity agreement with the
Hmm.
state of Tennessee. And so, on the 21st of this month, I'll be able to do that. And I'm going to add Tennessee to my list of states that I'm licensed in.
Oh, awesome. Well, that's good. Well, will you ever have more states, or will that be probably the max that you'll have?
We are really hoping, as therapists, that we get what's called, I believe it's something compact where it's almost like we have our home state. But as long as we remain within guidelines for our home state, we can work in any state. We're working on that.
Well, that's good then. All right, good. Well, what are some signs that a transgendered person might need additional mental health support during their transition?
So I don't work a lot with things like body dysmorphia. I do
Okay.
trauma and anxiety, depression, and things like that, which body dysmorphia a lot of times goes hand in hand with that. I don't specifically work with it, but body dysmorphia is one of the worst, and gender dysmorphia. So
Mm,
it's that confusion between going from one, to the other, even though internally you've always been this one. You know,
right.
you've been treated as another. And so I would say gender and body dysmorphia are one of the big ones, or
Okay.
two of the big ones.
Well, now I kind of want to switch off to what's called therapeutic process.
Mhm.
Uh, what role does therapy play in a transgendered person's transition, and how can it support both emotional and practical?
So therapy is really big, and a lot of times, a doctor, even though they are, affirming in this area,
Hmm.
will require them to do therapy in order to have the surgeries. 6
Okay.
months of therapy to make sure that things have been addressed, such as, past trauma, childhood trauma, any kind of abuse has been addressed prior to the surgery so that they know you are in a better, mental state
Hmm.
to make this decision.
Okay. Well, what type of therapies or interventions do you typically use to help your clients?
My biggest, probably blanket therapy is mindfulness. I find it so fascinating that our brain can do so much to help us. Like it's like we are really in control. We just don't realize it. Our brain has tricked us into believing it controls everything when in
Yeah.
we control the brain. We control how to heal. We control all of that. So mindfulness is one of the biggest ones. Being able to take a step back, breathe, ground yourself, be present. I work with a lot of the five senses work. So what are five things you can see, four things you can touch? And when you're in a immediate stressful situation, that can bring you right, like back to the here and now. I also use cognitive behavioral therapy because negative thoughts didn't come overnight. They have been bashed into your head, figuratively speaking, by media and people around you.
Yeah.
And so it takes a lot to retrain the brain to think in a more positive light. Not all positive thoughts are good. There's toxic positivity. So we aim
Mhm.
for neutral and then we move towards more positive thinking.
Okay. Well,
And of course, there's also psychodynamic, which kind of jumps more into more in-depth stuff with trauma, but those are my top three.
okay. All right. Well, how do you help clients navigate social challenges like discrimination and lack of support from family? Because you mentioned discrimination at the beginning.
Yes. So, coping mechanisms, we talk about setting boundaries. I tell my clients all the time that just because they're family does not mean they're not toxic. Just
Yeah.
because they're family does not mean you have to have them in your life either.
Yeah.
And we talk about different levels of which we put people. So there's those people that are closest to you that know your ins and outs and know everything about you. Then there's those people at the very end of this that you love, you support, and would be there for them, but you realize that they're incapable of doing that for you. And so creating, that kind of that structure and figuring out your boundaries when it comes to the different levels of people in your life.
Okay. All right. Well, what can someone expect during their first few therapy sessions if they are just now starting to transition?
A lot of childhood and narrative work because
Okay.
I need to know all of it. If there is some, uncle that is twice removed, but has still been in your life and had this level of impact for you at some point, I want to know about it. It's so important to have an overall picture of where you've come from so I can understand where we're going.
Okay, that makes sense. Well, now I want to switch to resources and support system. Are there any specific resources or community groups you can recommend for people undergoing a gender transition?
Yes, so I actually have some here to talk about. Let me see if I can find my paper because
Sweet, sweet.
I've got quite a few. Um, but one of the first ones is like GLAD. You
Okay,
know,
yep.
there is P Flag.
Okay,
There's one called W Path. Oh, there it is. The Trevor Project.
okay,
There is HRC or the Human Rights Campaign. And there's also, and this is one that would be kind of later on, or actually, you probably could use it anytime, is the Transgender Legal Defense and Education Fund,
mm-hmm,
which is that TLDEF. And anytime you can add legal in there is super important because the ins and outs of the legal part of it, I know nothing of. I
okay,
couldn't even venture a guess on how crap works or what has changed because it changes all the time. And so anytime I can get somebody involved with like the legal aspect of it, that opens up so many doors for people. Like it's just like, oh, I feel like I can navigate this.
yeah, okay, good, good. Well, how do you help clients access healthcare or even legal resources like you were just talking about that might be relevant to them during their transition?
So we will look up different places. Like I said, I have no problem, sitting here on my computer, them on their computer, and us going through looking for local LGBT, communities,
Mm-hmm.
um, centers, opportunities, Planned Parenthood. Most people don't know that they offer, gender affirming, kind of care.
Okay.
Um, Transgender healthcare resources is called the GLMA. I have no problem helping with that. I've even sat with people and helped them fill out paperwork. Sometimes I feel like a proud mom.
Well, yeah, in a way you are.
Absolutely.
Well, are there any support networks available for both transgendered individuals and their loved ones that you could recommend?
Actually, yes. So a lot of times what I end up doing is like I send my clients to like meetup.com to look for different groups. And,
Hmm.
like take alcoholics, for example. There's AA for them. There's
Yeah.
Al-Anon for their, families and stuff like that to support. There's a lot of, I don't know that there's necessarily an acronym for it, but there's a lot of opportunities if you will look for it to find stuff for the families as well,
Okay.
that are navigating this and trying to figure out how to, be affirming towards their loved one.
Okay. And that kind of segues into advice for families and allies section. What advice do you give a family member and friends of transgendered individuals who want to be supportive?
Just that. Be present, support, active listening. You know, the family has a harder time with like pronouns and names and things like that because for
Hmm.
so long they've known this individual as this. Me, you're coming to me as something else, or someone else, a different name, different everything.
Yeah.
It's a little easier for me. And so for families, it's, being understanding of individuals, misgendering or, wrong pronouns or whatever, being understanding of that and, kind of saying, I'm sorry, I will definitely make sure I make an effort next time to do it correctly. Or however you speak with your family. I get real clinical and I realize that people talk to their family completely different. And so figuring out that verbiage is important.
All right, all right. Well, how can a partner and loved ones of a transgendered person help them navigate, the emotional and social aspects of transitioning?
Go out with them, take them out, be supportive. You hear somebody say something, you say something, or you encourage them to, utilize your coping skills. Let's go over here. Let's not be around someone that is so negative. Let's go somewhere else. I'm right here with you. You're not alone. That's the biggest
Yeah,
thing. You are not alone.
yeah, that is exactly right. They're definitely not alone. And I try to the ones that I have friends that are transgendered here in Orlando, I always let them know you're not fighting this alone. There's a lot of people here to back you up should you need it. But I know this moves into probably one of the harder questions and stuff, talking about personal experiences and ethics. What has been your most rewarding experience working with a transgendered individual in their process of transitioning?
So, I told you this earlier, before we even started, that was one of the hardest questions that, I know you were going to ask. Um, And I get real emotional sometimes when I have a client come in and tell me, you saved my life, or without you, I wouldn't be here, or
Yeah,
you're the only one that was there for me during the hardest time. And it's not that I want to be that person. I want to show them that they can do it.
right.
And, but knowing that I have the ability or I'm in a position that I can save somebody's life is kind of insane to think about.
Yeah, no, and you're in a very unique field, and I'm sure you get that quite a lot. So,
But it's also the wins too. I enjoy, them coming to see me and they show me these two outfits that they picked out. Which one do you think looks better? Or what do you like? But it's those little things that they should be sharing with their family and their friends. And I'm having to provide both.
yep, no, I get it. Well, how do you ensure that the therapy that you are providing is inclusive and sensitive to the needs of the individual?
So I'll do a broader answer and then I'll go into individual. But like
Okay.
with what I do for a living, we're required, each state is required something different. So the state of Kentucky requires so many continuing education units every year when I renew. The state of Texas requires 24 every 2 years when I renew. I always make sure, no matter what, because my field is ever changing,
Hmm.
that I take something that has to do with gender affirming or inclusive always in a continuing education unit. And it goes for both. And it allows me to, kind of keep up with the verbiage and keep up with, the just struggles and the challenges that the community may be facing. And that allows me to then individualize care. So, working with each one of my clients, I get to know them from their childhood and their early adulthood, and just how they behave, how they absorb criticism, or how they absorb certain things in their lives. And I tailor everything I do to that. No one person I've ever seen in the last 13 years has the same, structured care plan at all
Yeah.
for me.
Yeah.
Everything is different.
Well, I always like to end this podcast, and I don't mean to ever put anyone on the spot, but you
Oh,
get the
oh,
last
great.
word. You get the last word before we sign off of here.
Okay. Well, let's go with you are not alone.
I agree.
You are loved, you are enough,
Mm-hmm.
and you make this world a brighter place.
Yeah, you can't say it any better than that right there. Well,
Absolutely.
Ashley, you've made an extremely proud dad here.
Thank you. You have no idea how nerve-wracking it's been knowing I was going to do this just because you're my dad.
Well, and it was me too sitting here getting ready to do it. I thought, oh, I'm nervous. And I do this all the time now. So,
I mean, I have a master's degree. Can't tell you how many times I've gotten up in front of people, doing stuff for my kids. And this was probably the most nervous I've been since I was in my 20s.
and you're only talking to your dad.
Exactly. But this was painless. Like, I
Yeah.
guess when I get up on my soapbox and I'm talking about things that are important to me, it just kind of flows.
Yeah. That's the way it works. Well, again, I just want to say thank you for doing what you do. Thank you for being a part of this because it sure means a lot to me. And I'm sure it's going to mean a lot to other people out there that get to see this.
Absolutely. My kids are excited to hear you and I doing a podcast
Are
together.
they really? Well, I'm
Yeah.
all excited about that. So yeah, this is one you can let them see.
Yeah, yeah. This is one.
Yeah. So all right. Well, I want to thank you again. Love you, and
Love you.
we'll talk soon.
Alrighty. Bye, Dad.